This pillar looks illegal, but it's made in vanilla. And here's how you can use item frames to transform your room from this into this. And these are 179 Minecraft build hacks that you need to try. And hey, according to the YouTube gods, no one's ever subscribed to the channel using their left pinky. So if you're up to that challenge, point your 5th digit at that red sub button below. It's free, and it helps out a ton. Maybe you've heard this before, but you can't sleep now, there's monsters nearby. But when you look around, you don't see any. Enter the monster under your bed. See, if you dig a 2-block hole underneath the bed, add in a daylight sensor, and then place an armor stand on top, it'll be just the right height to see the eyes of the monster head peek through right here, which is a good way to startle anyone who walks into your guest bedroom. Now that 1.19 is out, you'll want to get yourself a frog light farm, because it turns out these things are perfect for paper lanterns. Simply place them sideways, and these will fit right into place, especially if you add a fence on top and a button underneath like this user did. Then it'll look like it's actually stuck on the pole. Nice touch. Why does this river look better than this one? Well, even though they're both filled with water, what's underneath that water makes all the difference. And as we can surely see here, if you use blue blocks in the lake bed, you get a much prettier, more vibrant body of water. So if you've got the cyan dye, I would opt for this instead of yet another muddy patch of dirt and clay. Let's make a working globe in Minecraft. Now, Minecraft already has a globe in the cartography table, but compared to this one that we're gonna build, that's not even on the same level. Sure enough, by using the commands that user JMHMir lays out, we can use an armor stand with a special player head to slowly rotate in place on our desk. And while the commands to do it look pretty scary, don't worry. All you need to know is that this one summons in the globe armor stand, and then this one, when put in a repeating command block, will rotate that armor stand like so. Bridges are nothing new to Minecraft, but a rusty bridge, that's something fresh. Ironically so, I guess. With the help of the new mangrove roots, we can make these cool metal bridges to connect parts of your industrial base. And while I wouldn't suggest stepping on top of it without a tetanus shot, it does make for a new staple to a post-apocalyptic build. End rods are an expensive light source, but when used like this, it might be worth the splurge. By just placing these horizontally, we can line the sides with leathers and make a sleek-looking fluorescent light. And as this post notes, this could look great when you place it above a couple of your crops, especially because the particle effects will make it look like it's watering them, adding both function and form to the farm. Minecraft trees don't usually have branches, so let's fix that. With the help of hidden armor stands, you can add in little log details to your tree trunks. That way, you don't have to wait for a big oak tree to grow before you get any branches for yourself. Minecraft torches don't burn out, but we can make it look like they do. By simply using redstone torches instead, we can power these to make a really cool effect for your next mine shaft. And considering the only other way to get torches to burn out is to play on the April Fool's release of Minecraft 2.0, I'd say this is a step up, for sure. Now, you probably don't want to sit on a campfire, but extinguish it and add some signs like so, and now we've got ourselves a bench that's worth trying. And while that's a solid start, what I love about this example is the little bit of pathland in front of the bench, which makes it look like it's stamped down from all the people who sat there, bringing it all together to make this perfect for a future park. At first, shroom lights and dead coral don't seem to have anything in common, but when you place them side by side, you'll recognize that a dead bubble coral block looks like a depleted shroom light. So if you want to make it look like part of your store's light up sign burnt out, this is easily the best way to do that. If you're MatPat, you'll want to pay attention to this one, because as you can see, we've put some familiar animatronics into Minecraft. As the channel Beastin' and Feastin' shows, all we need are some armor stands posed the right way to make one of these creepy characters right in vanilla. Just make sure you sleep after you build them. I wouldn't want to risk a night shift around these. Be careful with this, because if you stare too closely, it might just hurt your head, because what we've done here with glazed terracotta is definitely confusing. But if you peek behind these stairs, you'll notice that it's just magenta glazed terracotta placed in a certain way, which if we then cover up, can make the illusion of a circle from the front. Minecraft chests are functional, but they're not always the best looking in bulk. So by instead using blocks like beehives and looms, we can make these believable looking piles of boxes. Or hey, use barrels and you can still even use them for storage. In Minecraft, you don't need to water your plants, but maybe we should have. See, if you mix in the new mangrove roots, we can make a convincing set of dead or dying plants. And honestly, I think this adds in a lot of personality to your builds, even if it is a little creepy. So you're probably not building your house out of melon, but this might make you reconsider, because strangely enough, if you use melon blocks as a texture for your walls, it'll look like a wallpaper ripped straight out of the 60s. And hey, mix in some green furniture, this will actually start to look kinda nice, even if it is a little dated. See this splash of color in the water? Well, this here's a life preserver. And it's so easy to build, I'm sure you can tell how to do it just by looking at it. But what really goes the extra mile here is that if you play on bedrock, you can tie your boat to a lead and attach it to a fence underneath the ring of glass, making it look like it's actually attached to the life preserver. Tridents actually have a use in building. Don't believe me? Well, take a look at this. By simply throwing a trident into place on a flower pot, we can make our very own mop to put on display. Is it expensive? Sure. But going the extra mile for details is always worth it in my eyes. How do we get this fish inside this aquarium? Well, listen close, because it's a weird set of steps. See, if you start with a chest like so, add a glass block on top, and then lay out out an item frame with a map on the bottom, we can get the hitbox in such a way where if you put a bucket of fish right here, it'll stay alive inside of the glass block, giving us a proper functioning fish bowl. Let's make this tiny bird bath, because for as cute as this looks, it's actually just as simple to build. All we need to do is waterlog a slab, then add in 4 signs to both block the water and add a lip to the bath bowl. And just like that, we've got the perfect spot for your parrots to hang out and chill. Literally. Take a look at these walls. Now, from afar, nothing looks too out of the ordinary, but up close, you'll notice that we actually did the unthinkable. We used walls as walls. And honestly, I'm amazed it isn't more popular to do this. You get more space for your interior, and it's cheaper than just using full regular blocks, both of which make this worth a try in your next base. With the help of the new mangrove planks, we can build something like this. I'm so sorry. But if you want to build this suspicious statue in your own world, all you need are some mangrove slabs, 2 doors, and a trap door to cover up the block for the center visor. Plus, if you partner this with the new skulk blocks, that will really make this look out of this world. You might not notice it at first, but down here we've added a special room trim to the walls of the house. And how did we do this? Well, the answer comes down to item frames, but not how you'd think. But rather, if you use an item frame to mark your spot and then type in this command, you can summon a falling sand entity right into place. And the end result is pretty convincing. When you're making a big build, sometimes the littlest details can go a long way. And for that, I think particle effects definitely fit the bill. And while there are plenty of existing ones to put on display with command blocks, that doesn't stop us from making our own. For example, take this vat of acid. By itself, it looks pretty bland, more like a green pool than anything else. But add some invisible armor stands into position with slime blocks on their head, and now we've got a bubbling mixture fit for a radiation warning. Or hey, do what these folks did and add some custom leaves falling off your cherry tree. When you're building something as grandiose as a volcano, every detail helps to sell the image. And nothing is more disappointing than a mediocre Mordor. So to kick your lava builds up a notch, this user has a great solution. By using an open fence gate, we can separate our lava from the campfire but still have the smoke billow out the top. And that, folks, adds a great particle effect to any lava lakes you plan on adding, especially when you partner with hay bales. One of the many challenges in the building community is how do you make circles in a game made of blocks? Now, the simple answer should be you can't, but that doesn't stop building hopefuls from making the illusion. So while everyone else looks for pixel art circle guides and generators, let's deviate and use stairs instead. With an example like so, we can make a ring design inside of your base's wall. And now we'll just have to wait until Mundo turns this into a door. When it comes to decorating your walls, Minecraft has options, but they're limited. Don't get me wrong, paintings and map walls look great, but they also tend to take up a chunk of space. So for a smaller footprint without sacrificing detail, why not mix your banners and item frames to make a fully functional mob poster? Which I think gives you possibly the best way to label any of your mob farms going forward. It can be a tough balance making your build look both run down and well made. So instead of giving off the destruction vibe with TNT, let's look elsewhere for our added details. And in this case, say we've got ourselves a pirate ship, but just wool alone isn't selling it on the sales. Well, stuff that very wool in a crafting table to make some banners, and the tattered look will be a lot more convincing going forward. With how clean Minecraft's textures can be, it can often be tough to make something look weathered or destroyed. Take a ruined portal for example. These are supposed to be burnt up and badly damaged, but the regular stone brick doesn't always sell that. So instead, we could add some of the deep slate and blackstone variants to the mix and make charred and damaged stone to your builds, which not only gives the blocks they're using some personality, but also helps your build to tell a story. Farms are a staple of Minecraft design, especially in survival. But while we're all used to the fields of wheat, carrots, and beetroots, this might be a stranger sight. Though, sure enough, we can take after this user and add in turtle shell helmets for something of a cabbage plant in your farmland. Just make sure you have the armor stands placed on a daylight sensor down below, otherwise they won't have enough height to peek through. The addition of glowing item frames was a huge revamp to how we display our items, and the ability to make these item frames invisible is even more useful, letting us do something like this, where we turn our colorful concrete items into glow-in-the-dark blocks to place on your wall. Lush caves are one of the more beautiful additions to Minecraft in recent years, but as it turns out, a good thing can get better, because while all this green is a welcome change from the walls of stone nearby, all it takes is a couple of giant mushrooms to make this site even prettier to see. And hey, mushrooms love the dark anyway, so it makes logical sense too. And for my money, that's a win on all fronts. For the building community, the advent of glow ink sacks is a pretty big game changer. And while the glow squid itself has been talked about to death, its drop might actually give you some neat opportunities. For instance, with the ability to make text on signs glow in the dark, we could tuck some of these in a dark cave and add in some creepy, atmospheric eyes in the darkness. And as long as your visitors don't step too close, this illusion should more than hold up. Fences and walls are commonplace in any Minecraft build you visit, and while they're nice enough blocks to use, I think we need to do better. But luckily on Bedrock, that solution is super simple. Over here, it's possible to put different buttons on top of the posts. And while we can't do the same on Java, a bonus tip for there is that by adding string on top of walls, we can make them into columns when we choose to. Adding custom plants to your base can really improve a build just like that. Though not everyone is looking to sink the time into building a custom tree. So why don't we start small and just improve your pumpkins and your jack-o'-lanterns. By throwing a sea pickle to the top of one of these, we can add a nice little stem to the picture. Or hey, candles could also do the same effect. And either option will definitely step up your game next Halloween. Armor stands not only let us display our armor, but also use that armor as a decoration. And this here's my favorite instance. See, while this looks like a regular chest to the outside world, when you open it up, we're treated to a proper golden treasure inside. And the setup is surprisingly simple. All we need to do is lay our armor stand on a block with a shorter hitbox, in this case, an enchantment table, and then push a regular block in a chest into its place with a piston. And from there, what I love most about this is that the helmet fits right within the spot of the chest texture, almost like it's meant to be. Building over water can be a real hassle. After all, since the liquid lacks a hitbox, it's not exactly easy to build in the ocean, and most of the time we have to start with a pillar from the lake bed to even place one block. But thankfully, we have lily pads for a better alternative, and using these, we can start from the surface instead of diving deep, and that alone can save us a bunch of time on any and all future pirate builds. Sometimes it pays to have a different perspective, so while a block might look one way while it's facing you, if you flip it around, it might just be used in an entirely different way. So sure, you could use a lectern as just that, but if you rotate it around 180 degrees, then it makes for a fancy banister to use on your staircase. Between glass panes, tinted glass, and 16 dyes to choose from, windows have plenty of variety. But while those blocks are great, they don't exactly have a small footprint. So if you're looking to make a detailed window without all the space that it takes up, why not just bust out some blue banners like such? Add white lines for shading and a frame of choice, and the result will be something pretty special. While Minecraft signs allow you to use emojis and Unicode characters, those don't exactly have detail. So to spice up your signage at the next shop, why not mix together item frames and signs to do the trick? Since these can overlap, we can both denote and show the item in question. And I've gotta say, that adds a nice bit of clarity to your next potion shop. And from there, it's up to you to choose what to sell. When you're overlaying blocks in a build, you've not only got to consider the texture on top, but also the background. Let me explain with this scenario. Say you've got a set of vines climbing along the stone wall. It looks fine, but if we add some copper ore to the backdrop, then it gives off the illusion of flowers on the vines. And it's the little things like this that definitely help to show that you're considering all parts of the build. Whether through command blocks or mods, some pros in the community have made functional mirrors in-game, but the rest of us might want something a bit more possible in survival. And in that case, we can make a fairly convincing glass effect utilizing banners as such. I mean, I wouldn't use these to check your hair, but that's what the F5 key's for. And while a waving mirror might be weird, it looks a lot better than just some glass blocks. Minecraft swamps are set for a lot of change, and with that comes plenty of new plants to see. However, that doesn't mean we can't add in a few of our own. So until they're announced, why not fake it with this cattail creation? All you need to do is place 2 support blocks, lay out your brown candles, and then replace the support with a plant of your choice. And it's definitely a way to take your sugarcane into the next level. As we've talked about in the past, armor stands are entities, and with those properties, we can get some interesting results. For instance, why not overlap their hitboxes and score some extra detail on a build? After all, we can place as much of these in a single space as we want, so that gives us free reign to have our armor stands wear both the head and helmet in the same display. When it comes to showing off your stuff, these item frames are the best that we've got. Though if you go through the effort to make a handwritten novel, then something tells me that this doesn't do it justice. So instead, why not fashion something out of a display case like so? Building this is super cheap, only asking for a lectern and a dyed piece of glass. But with that, we can have ourselves a way to show off your manifesto at its besto. Steve's technology isn't exactly high tech, so if you're tired of the dark ages and want to bring your realm into the information age, why not try this? By throwing a gradient banner like this on a shield, you can get a pretty convincing cell phone when it's placed in an item frame. And while I doubt that T-Mobile has coverage on your server, this might be a nifty detail to add to your next desk. Let's be honest, waterfalls in Minecraft are kinda lame. Here, they're majestic and a force to be reckoned with, but in-game, they barely even generate, let alone seem powerful. So to make your waterfalls a bit more cool, maybe turn to the particle effects instead. By adding campfires to the mix, we can use the smoke to give off the illusion of roaring water. Sure, it's a bit gray, but from a distance, I think this could sell the look pretty well. When you're decorating your house, then a couple of plants can really liven it up. Though while others settle for a standard sapling in the flower pot, we can get a bit more creative. And sure enough, by using a bamboo stem and a glowberry bush, we can make a cute tree to show off on your shelf. And since the glowberries can extend off the roof, this plant could really be about as tall as you like. While ancient debris has many cool uses, I think its lava resistance is particularly interesting, and it allows us to make this new kind of smelting. See, since our items won't melt into the flames, we can pour lava over the top of the super smelter and have our hopper input hidden in the inferno. Then, when you you need to smelt for scrap, throw a couple of debris in, and accept your lava forged reward, which is much cooler than just some simple furnace. I'm gonna guess Steve and Alex aren't into high fashion. I mean, most of the time that you see them, they're wearing the same clothes, but maybe that's because they haven't had the options yet. So to open them up to the world of couture, why not get to making a closet? Throw some banner designs on an end rod pole like such, and this wardrobe quickly becomes something worth building in your next house. Sometimes the hidden details can make all the difference, and nowhere is that more true than the debug stick. After using this command to get the tool, we're able to rearrange the hitboxes of things like fences and iron bars to get even better looks. By themselves, these decorations always do what they want to do, but through some persuasion of the debug stick, we can realign them back to our liking. And from there, the results are definitely a step up. Every builder loves half slabs, but while these are great, they're not ubiquitous, meaning we're fairly limited in the half steps we can use. Or so you thought, since if we take after this user, we can actually use beds as a substitute. See, all it takes is placing one of the 16 bed types and then right-clicking it with a debug stick to get something of a colorful slab to use. And sure, the feet might be a giveaway from this angle, but anywhere else, the illusion does the trick. Now, I'll be honest, I never figured anvils to be much good for decorating, but when we start using these for a floor pattern, then it's a different story. So while we probably need a decent iron farm to pull this off, it is cool to know that with their different hitboxes, these blocks can let us build something special. As we know, Minecraft doesn't allow for leaves to change the season, which is fine if you want an evergreen, but it means our maple trees and cherry blossoms are out of luck. But thankfully, the coral can help us out. As you can see, by using commands to set up certain coral plants like so, we can create some really beautiful leaves to coat our trees. And while you'll need to set the world so that the coral doesn't decay, I think the results are worth it. As it's clear to see, Minecraft is a game made of blocks, which is why it's such a cursed sight to see a circle like so. But even if it breaks Mojang's unspoken rules, there are plenty of cool things that we can still do with these. As is, the way that we pull these off is by summoning a bunch of armor stands around a relative position. And then, to give that subtle curve, we have them face towards a center point and then give us that smoothed out area. And while Mysticat has shown off how to make one of these into a pool of water, we could also just as well make a tire swing out of these, and both of which are plenty cool to see. Recently, Minecraft's ores got a new look, and while that's great, especially for helping out colorblind players, we can push this redesign even further. See, by merging armor sets with our stone blocks, we can make our very own kinds of ores within the cave systems. Are they convincing? Not necessarily, but they do add a fun bit of variation to the dark depths. Minecraft has plenty of ways to show off your gear, and let's be honest, by this point, they're a bit stale. So to upgrade our presentation, we'll have to combine a few methods, and I think this helmet display does just that. See, while others settle for just an armor stand, we can go that extra mile by pushing a couple of these blocks into the entity, and from there, we score a glass case right for showing off your netherite helmet. Minecraft transportation is a tried and tested topic, but if you're not worried about the fastest way to travel, then why not opt for some more style? And for that, you can't do much better than a bicycle. Through armor stands and partially submerged banners, you can make a pretty convincing vehicle in your Minecraft world. Or convincing until you try to bike somewhere, because then, not so much. If you ask me, it's fun to build things in Minecraft that don't make sense at a first glance. Like, take a look at this pond for example. As it appears, the stone pattern is placed off-center from the actual grid. But what's actually happening is that we're using waterlogged stairs and slabs to keep those textures, but then make the blocks our own way. And while it's a fun surprise to pull in your friends, I also think it looks quite nice as well. If you don't have World Edit loaded up, then the fill command is the best you got. And let's be honest, it's not the most robust. So we'll need to get creative to get the most out of it. And luckily, this seems to do the trick. See, if you were to build in a regular shape and then fill from layer 2 onwards with carpet, then it will only stack where the pattern is. And then you change the carpet for your block of choice, and now enjoy the time that you've saved. Minecraft has come a long way from just the stone and oak buttons of the past. But while the new additions don't add in new pulse lengths, they do make a great candidate for detail. Take, for example, this stone wall. By itself, it's nothing too fancy, but add in some of these colorful buttons, and the thing becomes a convincing rock climbing wall. Or for those of you in creative, concrete and invisible item frames should work just as well, maybe even better. One of the pain points in creative building is that you can't place a block freestanding. So if you mess up on a floating block, you've got to build off of it just to replace the original. So instead of that hassle, maybe try this. By holding a block in your offhand, all it takes is hitting the left click and the right click buttons at the same time to replace the freestanding block. And then, simple as that, the mistake is fixed. With 16 different dyes to choose from, Minecraft's carpet collection clearly has a lot of variety, but just in color, not so much in texture. So if you're looking for a bit more depth to your floor's rug, maybe try this instead. Through the help of waterlogged slabs, we can keep the coral alive to make fuzzy counterparts to the usual carpets. Granted, there's not as many colors to choose from, but the first impression of seeing this on your floor more than makes up for that. With the 1.17 update, item frames got a big change in the form of glow ink sacs. And while those help a lot, maybe you're looking for another color instead of illumination on your tools. Well, we might have the upgrade you need. See, if we mix banners and posed armor stands together in creative mode, we can make functional frames. So if your pickaxe deserves more color, or maybe it's time to roll out the red carpet. As you'll see from any pro builder, not everything has to be functional to have its place in the build. And actually, a lot of the admittedly pointless things in a build might do a lot for the aesthetic. And I think this arcade machine is a good example of that. Now, sure, you're not going to be playing Galaga on the thing, but with the right painting, you can get a cool display set up for your house's gaming room. And as the channel Beastin' and Feastin' shows off, all you need is some snow layers to line up the armor stands, and then you'll have the perfect joysticks as well. With the different item frame variants, there are plenty of ways to display your stuff, but understandably, you might want something even more. So in that case, I should tell you about this way to encase your items in glass. As I'm sure you guessed, by tossing together our invisible armor stands within the glass block, we can make something of a display case to put in our world, which I think looks great, and it would definitely open up some nifty possibilities. So whether you're building this to showcase items in a vending machine or a shop, or you just want a snow globe around the holidays, I think there's plenty of creativity this allows us to see. By this point, we're all plenty familiar with the grass block texture, which means using this in a build can often feel tired, or at the very least, underwhelming. But fortunately, we've got some blocks in recent years to help break up that monotony. Like, why not add a strip of moss to the green in your yard to make it look mowed? Or even just mixing in some green concrete powder here and there can help to texture those paths we've seen hundreds of times before. While Minecraft allows for logs and wood blocks to have different orientations, the planks are a different story. Though, to offset that pain, we could just turn to a different path entirely. Sure enough, the next time that you go to build a dark oak wall, maybe add some cartography tables for detail. As you can see, these have a vertical texture compared to the standard horizontal. So until rotated planks become a base feature, this might be your best bet. Ever since they were added back in 1.14, barrels have offered a chunk of options for how we build. But it turns out that on Bedrock, we can do even more. See, as this post lays out, we can use a mix of pistons and observers to earn ourselves a permanently open barrel. And that means a whole new texture to use in our builds. So if you don't have a debug stick, this might be your next best pick. If you've messed around with map making, you're plenty familiar with the concept of custom player heads. And while these can work fine on their own, they get even cooler when we partner them with armor stands. And my favorite example of so would be this tiki totem pole. As this user showed off on Reddit, we can mix together placed heads and armor stands to add different scales into our tower, which I think gives a really cool option for decorating your next jungle temple base. And come to think of it, this technique could also be used for some really convincing snowmen. Sometimes the blocks that you need can be the least expected. For example, why would you ever think to mix basalt and dead coral? But when you build them like so, we can make a very cool looking stone tree. And while these do make good candidates for the Yogscast's cobblestone trees, another stone worth trying is using the dripstone blocks as a new bark texture. When you think of using signs in building, you're probably picturing something like this. But folks, that's only scratching the surface. And it turns out that even without text, these could be an invaluable resource to add. For instance, look at these columns. What would have been simple stacks of blocks becomes something much more upscale when we add signs for detail. And I think when you're able to use something as cheap as a sign to level up your build, it's a no-brainer to add. Every now and then, a simple trick is all you need. So while I'm sure your harbor already looks great, wouldn't it look just that little bit better if you switched the sunken oak logs for dark oak instead? That way, the darker texture would make the logs look water-worn and wet, adding that little bit of character to your build. It's hard to say anything in Minecraft really looks comfy. I mean, with so many straight lines and hard edges, even the beds look uninviting. And while there's only so much we can do to fix that, maybe we can start by adding a few of these pillows to your local lounge. And while these might not exactly be the throw pillows we see in our day-to-day, at least they're still made of wool. If you think about it, composters would make for great barrels. At least they would if we could fill them with something other than the pod's texture. But luckily, with armor stands, we don't have to give up on that wooden barrel dream. Rather, if we chuck one of these statues inside the hitbox and throw a block on its head, we can make a custom barrel filled with our choice. And I think that's better than this trapdoor option in one key way. We can have varying heights of liquid, which basically lets us create our own cauldrons. With so many people doing 100-day challenges, it's gotta get tough to keep track of the days. So, to help with that, or at least look like you're helping with that, why don't we check our calendar over here? Sure, it's a far cry from functional, but to beat that, you could tuck a day counter system like such underneath, and bam. But even without that, it sure does look nice. As much as I love using armor stands when they're invisible, I think it is worth giving credit to the item itself. After all, they do share the same texture with oak planks, which means that we can use these for some pretty natural looking illusions. And as Green and others have shown, we can use that with the fact that they behave as entities to get some impressive results. Like so, where we place a bunch of these armor stands at different rotations within the same block. And then we can use their necks and shoulders as the base for a campfire. And while it might not cook a medium rare, it does offer up a smaller, more subtle choice compared to its bigger cousin. Jack-o'-lanterns are a classic bit of Minecraft lighting, but they're so classic that there's really no room for creativity here. Though thanks to invisible glowing item frames, we can use map art to make our very own custom designs. And as this user shows off, that opens up a lot of possibilities. So if you're tired of having the same decorations as everyone else, this should help to set you apart come next Halloween. Space travel is a common goal down here on Earth, and while it's not possible in Minecraft without mods, this might let us pretend that it is. As you'll notice, the end portal texture makes for a convincing starry background. So when you get some of the trees underneath your floor, you can give the impression that you're stationed above the stars. And I think that's a detail worth using in any future sci-fi maps you plan on making. When it comes to storing items, Minecraft's got plenty of options, but displaying those items, that's a bit more limited. Might I suggest campfires? Now sure, when they're lit, these things can only keep the items on for so long, but as soon as you put out that fire, they'll stay in place. So if you want a shelf for your steaks, I guess this does the trick. Unlike many other games, Minecraft doesn't overload you with loading screens, but the ones that it does have are somewhat basic. So if you're fed up of waiting on this screen, then I guess you could always wait on this screen instead. Using the banner's sway animation, it's possible to make a fully functioning loading screen within your world. And weirder yet is that even if you reload the chunks or restart the save, they still flow the same way. I'm sure we've all wanted X-ray vision at some point, and while some players get it through questionable methods, there are some interesting ways to do this in the base game, and this option using armor stands definitely fits that bill. See, when an armor stand holds a glass block, the transparency is rendered in a weird way, meaning that certain things don't show up when we see through the glass, and that allows us to see through oceans, or even paintings on a wall. So while it's not a perfect replacement for the Ocarina of Time Lens of Truth, I will say that if you're in the Bedrock edition, this could make for a fun puzzle to add into your maps. Minecraft has plenty of mobs to witness in the base game, but once you've played as much as we have, these things are old hat. So if you're tired of foxes that look like this, then maybe this is worth a shot. See, by using armor stands aligned like such, we can use much smaller versions of the blocks to create our own special sculptures. And the best part is that all of these are possible without using mods. So while the complexity on display can clearly vary, there's still plenty of creativity to see. And while I can only imagine the headache it would require to painstakingly lay out each piece of this tiger, I also can't argue that the results are quite special. Mineshafts add a classic bit of detail to the Minecraft caves, but while they work when they're 3 blocks wide, pulling off a 2x2 does not seem as possible. Or at least it wouldn't if we didn't have the debug stick. But using one of these, we can fix our fences to only connect along the walls, meaning we fashion a center gap just the same. Did you ever notice that the spruce door and the spruce trap doors look eerily similar? Well, using that, we can place 2 trap doors on the floor and make the illusion of a torn down or damaged front door. And funnily enough, this should actually keep out adult zombies better than the actual door anyway. Waterlogged slabs can be a real ace up your sleeve, because what everyone sees as a normal block actually has the same properties as a water source. So, while sure, we can't place lily pads on dry land, if we waterlog a slab in that floor, then we can play by our own rules. So to anyone looking to open up their aquatic details to the landlubbers on shore, this might just be your golden opportunity. Minecraft has plenty of mini-games to see, but a lot of those are only possible with command blocks and special plugins. So for something better suited for survival, these item frames are a solid pick, since all it takes is a grid like so, and the right set of items to make our very own functional chessboard. And while it doesn't look quite like the Queen's Gambit, I do think there's enough here to practice the principles. Little details can go a long way to beefing up your build. So while your friend might just stop at building a nice looking base, you went the extra step with this. As you can see, invisible item frames are the solution. Throw a couple banners into place, and it can add a fun detail to any mailbox that you place outside your house. It's not exactly a letter from Hogwarts, but the thought still counts. Beacons are a sight we're all familiar with, but maybe not like this. Though, even if this seems cursed, the tech to pull it off is surprisingly simple. See, beacons are transparent blocks, meaning beacon beams can pass through other beacons. So if you have the spare blocks on hand, you can make something of a custom beacon in vanilla. And while this does wind up being a pretty expensive facade, the results are definitely unique, and it might be the perfect prank for your next friend's visit. Clearly, armor stands can be used for some pretty amazing things, and with the help of command blocks, we can push that even further. See, all of these NBT data changes that we do like so, we could automate with repeating commands, meaning we can turn an armor stand like this into a working ceiling fan, which I'll fully admit seems ridiculous, but I also can't argue with the results. And while this option with swords maybe takes the term propeller blades a bit too literally, we could just as well use shields like this example. Now, on first glance, arrows might not seem too helpful for building, and outside of a couple of item frames, you might not see these used. But while that might be true for the regular arrows, these potion variants are the real candidate. See, these tipped arrows have particles along their path, meaning if we build something like this, we can use their effects to make a pretty neat water fountain in the town square. And this proves there's a use for water-breathing arrows after all. Having a Minecraft wallpaper is not a new concept. I'm even sure some of you have them. But putting a wallpaper in Minecraft? That's next level. And no folks, this isn't using some mod like Computer Craft, but rather, by using the bottom half of a pattern banner, we can sell the look of a computer right on your wooden desk. You can even angle it, which I think is all the better. Minecraft offers plenty of variety for its different carpets, but that's all for color, not so much for detail. So that's our cue to think of something new. And while we could get crazy and use map art for detailed rugs, luckily, there's a simpler solution with our signs. Since these can overlap with the carpets, we can use our own sign patterns to make different designs in the flooring. And whether you use these for your roads or your rugs, they both can definitely level up a build. Even though Minecraft doesn't abide by the rules of gravity, there's still an expectation that your build should. And almost always, if something looks unsupported, it looks out of place. So you won't normally see a set of stairs along the side of your building. But with this simple touch, you can make it happen. And with a simple touch of the subscribe button, you can stay in the loop for more videos with tips and tricks like this one. And funnily enough, by just using trapdoors like so, we can add a convincing railing to the build. With each new update, Mojang gives us in the building community something to play around with. And for the wild update, that's currently the addition of Skulk. And since the Skulk veins function like vines, we can completely reimagine our existing textures. For instance, we can take after this user and make our own blue variant of the standard magma block. Even though Minecraft does have birds, it's funny that the only eggs that we see hatching are turtle eggs. And while I doubt that that's changing anytime soon, we can at least play pretend using this trick. By throwing down your egg of choice on top of a bed of coral, we can make a pretty convincing egg in a nest effect. And hey, if you can add a waterlogged slab, then the coral sticks will have a lot more color as well. Clearly, a little detail goes a long way. So while it would be nice to add a potted plant to your Minecraft house, why stop there? Instead, we could add something like vines to the outside of the leaves, give it some much needed depth to the vegetation. So if you're not already playing with something like Vanilla Tweak's Bushy Leaves add-on, this might be a good alternative. Let's face it, making a wall look interesting is none too straightforward, but it's a problem we need to solve to avoid a boring build. So to fix that, we need to use different variants of the same texture. Like, why have just an andesite wall that looks like this, when we could use literal andesite walls to give something of a carved out illusion? And by partnering those together with stair slabs and buttons, we can give that lump of rock a lot more personality than it once had. While hoppers definitely have their use, if you don't have the iron on hand, then the water is an obvious choice. But hey, just because we're dishing the metal doesn't have to keep us from being industrial. On the contrary, if we put these fluid dynamics inside of trapdoors like so, we get both stylish and functional pipes to use in your world. Particles can do a lot for the atmosphere of your build, but without the help of commands and survival, they're not very easy to use. Though with help from the crying obsidian block, that might just be changed. See, by putting these in your roof, they can fall through the trapdoors and add some extra magic to your enchanting room, which is a neat effect for sure. While I doubt we'll get any kind of buildcraft style pipes in game anytime soon, that doesn't mean that we can't play the part. And for that, our top candidate is the new copper lightning rods. These are already perfect additions to any steampunk build, but add some levers and the pipes come together themselves. And if you got yourself a drowned farm, the supplies are already there. One of the inescapable truths in Minecraft is that grass is a very different color map depending on the biome. Meaning, if you place a green grass block from your inventory inside of a desert, all you're gonna see is yellow. And that's unfortunate. Or it was, until the Caves and Cliffs update. Now, with the help of the moss blocks and azalea leaves, we can get green lush colors wherever we'd like. And that'll definitely help your oasis to actually look like an oasis. As of the Nether update, we've had the ability to put these chains to use in our world. And while they're great, they do seem a bit dainty. And something tells me these frail things aren't carrying something as big as this anchor. So let's swap in the grindstone instead. As it turns out, just alternating a couple of these in a pattern like so is enough to make a fairly convincing chain. And I'd figure this is much better suited for carrying than just a couple of nuggets on an ingot. Campfires can be a plenty useful block to have in your base. But even if you're not cooking, you could always use these for their smoke effects. And surprisingly, that smoke can even move through blocks. So by placing a loom on top of a campfire, we can get a pretty solid vent effect to put to use. Building a custom tree instead of a bone meal one is a quick way to improve your build. But when it comes to adding branches on that tree, it's a bit tougher. So when the standard logs are a bit too big to use, then fences might be the next best solution. Mixing in these, as well as a combination of stairs and slabs, can add a ton of detail, and keep your scale on the smaller side. How you light up a build can play a big part into its atmosphere, and while torches are functional, they're not exactly the most dramatic. Far from it. So if you want to fix that, these extra tall candles are a solid solution. And whether you do this with a white candle on top of an end rod or a green one on top of a potted bamboo, the results of either should be a welcome improvement. As we've shown, sugarcane can be a valuable tool for decorating, but its limitations can hold it back. So if you're tired of only placing these reeds by water, this might be a better option. See, all it takes is pushing a block into place with a piston to glitch out the plants and leave them standing there just the same. At which point we can swap the water out for lava, or any block for that matter, and successfully avoid another one of Mojang's rules. When it comes to storing your stuff, a chest minecart maybe isn't your first pick, but that might be our mistake, since when we stack them like so, we can turn these roller coaster rejects into proper working drawers. And frankly, I think that's a nice change of pace. So while these can't store as much as the double chests that we're used to, they do offer a storage solution that shows a bit more effort than just a standard barrel. If we cross together multiple armor stands and pose their arms in a certain way, we can then add in leaves to get something of a smaller tree. And while this is much easier to pull off in Bedrock where they have the arms by default, with a data pack this is plenty possible in all versions. As any game designer knows, it isn't always easy to get the players to follow the correct path, and more often than not, when someone gets lost, they also get frustrated, and that's the last thing we want. So to help guide our players along the straight and narrow, why not illuminate the path like so? By chucking an armor stand with a helmet into a minecart, we can clip the top of its noggin outside to give an animated motion to our road. One of the major changes in the first part of the Caves and Cliffs update was the revamp of ore textures, and regardless of how you feel about them, the new looks do offer up some new details, and my favorite might just have to be the gold ore. As some have pointed out, by mixing these in the stone floor underneath a beehive, you can make it look as if the honey is dripping out of an overstocked nest, and I think that's just adorable. Hopper chains are an essential build in Minecraft, there's no doubt about that, but what they have in function, they lack in visual interest. That's probably why we hide these away from most of our farms, there just isn't much going on. But to spice that up, add some banners underneath like so, and now you've got a subtle hopper pumping animation. Now, if you've checked the various building subreddits and communities, you've come across the fascination with making gaming computers with your gaming computer in a video game. And while I think that whole thing is overwhelmingly meta, I will say that this is the best candidate for a computer setup that I've seen. By giving a black shield to an invisible armor stand and adjusting its position like so, we can get a pretty convincing monitor to put at your desk. Man, at that point, add in your mouse and RGB keyboard, and that setup will be up and running. Having a furnace is a necessary evil for your survival base, but just because we need to have one doesn't mean we need to be boring about how we place it. And that's why something like this fireplace is the perfect solution. That way the block isn't left out in the open, but we can still right-click the floor and use it just the same. Alright, this might seem a little strange, but what if I told you there's a way to show off your armor using an armor stand, but without ever seeing that armor stand? Let me explain. See, by using changing the invisible tag on our armor stands, we can give off the impression that the armor set is hanging like so, which I think looks quite nice. And hey, if you add boots to the set, then it can look like shoes are lined up along the floor. When you're trying to sell the atmosphere of a build, it's the small things that'll make the biggest difference. And when we talk about that, particle effects definitely stand out against the rest. You see, say you're building a dungeon or a basement in your world, and you want to prove that it's run down. Well, add some water over top and a waterlogged stair below, and now you can prove that this place is damp and dreary. A boat is a good asset to keep on hand, but if you're going to stash in a chest, then maybe try this instead. Taken after this user, all it takes is a trapdoor and a chain to make a convincing crane for your shipyard. And then, if you want to go for a ride, simply hop in the boat and row it offshore. I'll be the first to admit that paintings do not get a lot of use in my world. And while that's true, I think an implementation like this has a lot more of a reason to exist. By doing this, we go from a bland piece of wall decor into a nice piece of world building, and I think that's a worthwhile trade-off. Plus, this is fairly simple to build. All we need to do is push a trapdoor into place with our armor stand, and then add a 1x1 painting to the front. Let's face it, torches are overdone in Minecraft builds. I mean, sure, they're functional, but a tiny piece of coal on a stick isn't the most impressive sight, especially when you're building on a grand scale. So if you're looking to light up your base in a way befitting to the size, I think these super-sized torches are a big improvement. Now, from this angle, the physics don't make much sense, but what's actually happening here is that we have an armor stand strategically placed atop a waterlogged slab, and then we bathe it in lava, giving us that flame particle effect to play with. Then, with the light given off from the lava, we get a pretty nifty pyrotechnic to put to use. Invisible item frames open up a whole range to creative mode building, and while we could fill a whole video just with ideas for those, one of my favorites might just be using these on bushes. By doing this, we can not only add some sparks of color to your hedge maze, but also create our own kind of bushes, whether that's rose, berry, or something entirely new. Now, with all the banners that we've been making, clearly there's been plenty of trips to the loom, and while sure, it is a helpful block, when you're not using it, it doesn't look the most interesting. So how about we spruce up our banner making machine with, you guessed it, banners. Overlap the hitboxes like such, and you'll definitely add some style points for the next time you visit your world-famous loom room. Minecraft doesn't offer up much of its own vehicles, but that doesn't stop the community from building plenty of their own. So if you like building excavators and tanks at your base, maybe add this to the mix. By using blocks with different depths, such as sandstone stairs in a desert biome, we can make vehicle treads for added realism. And now we just need dirt stairs to make this in the rest of the overworld biomes. When you're building in Minecraft, scope can be a huge factor for impressing, but just because we're scaling our size doesn't mean we need to scale back the detail. So before you break ground on that mega base, take after this user and alternate between something of a linear pattern to help your walls look good. Because in the end, if you're going to spend the time to lay out this many blocks, you might as well have it look good at any size that you look at it. Lanterns make a fantastic decoration for lighting up your base, but that said, they can be a pain to place, and the restriction to only have these vertically supported would be a problem if we didn't have a glass pane. See, as others have pointed out, a 1x1 glass pane is virtually unnoticeable, meaning we can place our lanterns underneath these and have them somewhat floating, and then use mobs and leads to add a string detail for the new lights. Trees are a great asset to add into any build, but it's easy to feel limited to just the wood types Mojang's added in, though luckily all it takes is a bit of thinking to get a better solution. I think these pointed dripstone spikes might just sell the illusion better, and after you've got that, add in a few blocks for coconuts, and you've got something truly worth putting on any beach build. When it comes to lighting up a body of water, the answer isn't always straightforward. Obviously, torches don't gel in that situation, so we'll need to look elsewhere. And if you're looking for something a little less costly than glowstones or sea lanterns, then regular lanterns might be your pick. By throwing these on the underside of a lily pad, we get a really slick way to subtly light up your ponds and lakes. Sometimes the blocks you least expect it can work out the best, and that's definitely the case with this castle gate. Now, never in a million years would I have thought to use lecterns in this way, but after seeing this post, I'm well inclined to believe it's the right choice. And honestly, I think it looks even better than their intended purpose anyway. As we know, armor stands are entities, not blocks, which means there's a lot of opportunity that comes from overlapping multiple blocks and armor stand hitboxes. And with the Caves and Cliffs update, that came in the form of the telescope. After aligning the legs of the armor stands just right, we can fashion ourselves a base to then lay out our copper lightning rods. And while I wouldn't recommend looking through this on a stormy day, this might be a neat detail to add to your next observatory. Sometimes while building in Minecraft, the grid system might be a frustration. And while command blocks do give us a workaround, there actually is a way to do this in survival. See, the way that stairs connect, if you place a ring of them like so, then the center connects in the middle of the blocks. Do the same with another on top, and you too can make a pillar in your house that's visibly off the grid. If you add a piece of coral to the top of your warp trap door, we can make somewhat of a lotus plant inside of your world, which gives some much needed color to a biome that's been neglected. Minecraft is full of necessary evils, but the most common case might just be the F3 debug menu. Sure, it's helpful, but all those numbers and values are a pain to look at after a while. So to spare yourself the trouble of finding diamond level yet again, why don't you just throw up some of these numbers on banners and make a visual indicator instead. That way, next time you enter the quarry, you can stop where you need to without ever entering into the screen. One of the coolest hacks for Minecraft building is mixing entities with pistons to create something truly unique. And nowhere's that more apparent than the stovetop. After throwing some hopper minecarts on top of a campfire, we can push an iron trap door into collision with the cart and make an impressive stove fixture. With a 1.13 update aquatic, swimming in Minecraft got a lot more enjoyable. So it's only fair that we match that fun that we have over here with a couple of these pool floaties. See, as this user showcased, all we need is a handful of waterlogged trapdoors and some carpet to make our very own pool inflatables for lounging around. And hey, for even more detail, why not use snow layers instead of white carpet to let us add in a headrest to the end? Mojang has gone on the record saying that they don't plan to add any chairs of their own. So when that's the case, we'll have to come up with some of our own. And in my book, this might be the best yet. By using just the bottom half of a bed, we can partner this together with a banner to get something of a sofa chair. And with 16 different colors and even more banner patterns to choose from, there's plenty of room for personal choice here. If you're looking for it, there are plenty of great features in Minecraft's various furniture mods. But that doesn't help us on the vanilla side. Though why don't we tackle that issue one point at a time, starting with the printer for Mr. Crayfish's furniture mod. With a banner and a slab, we can make a fairly decent printer loaded up with paper. Minecraft has plenty of foodstuffs to go around, but shockingly few can be used for decoration, and I think that's a raw deal. So to solve your stew situation, this composter might be the solution. Now, sure, when it's empty, it doesn't look like much, but fill it up to the brim and put it over a campfire, and now you got a feast fit for the village. It seems like everything these days is getting a whole spectrum of wood types to choose from, all except for ladders. So if that lack of representation is getting you down, then smokers might be a surprising solution. As you'll see, using the backside of smokers, you can give a somewhat spruce-like, kind of industrial texture to your world. And then, even if you add regular ladders on top for functionality, that extra board is going to give a lot more depth than just a ladder on some cobblestone. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that most of us don't use structure voids on a daily basis, but it turns out that might be our mistake, because with results like this, that block can clearly be useful for creative building. And I think this example of using rails and structure voids for something of a support beam can be a real help for detail. See, while we're all familiar with pistons for moving our blocks, it turns out by placing a couple like so, we can make a pretty convincing pipe setup as well. And while they aren't nearly as functional as something you'll find in Buildcraft, they do add a great detail to your next industrial base. With cleverly placed and dyed banner patterns, it's clearly possible to make realistic lighting effects for your wall lamps. So until we get ray tracing in Java, this might be your best bet. When building in Minecraft, it's important to stick to your block palette, but above that, it's even more impressive to incorporate different gradients. And as you can see from this example, it can also add a bit of fun to the detail. So if you're looking for a themed way to house your bee farm, then maybe this honey to jungle plank transition is just what your beehives need. If you ask the building community, Minecraft is always in need of more trees. And with 1.17's azalea trees just reusing the oak log, we'll have to look somewhere else to play with a new texture. So how about we leave the caves and instead look to these palm trees? Now, while ancient debris offers up a great texture for these tropical trees, I figured the solution is only worthwhile on creative mode. And even if it looks great, it's definitely not a tree you want to punch. Have you ever thought about eating redstone? No, me neither. But after seeing it like this, I'm starting to reconsider. See, since vines have a see-through texture, we can mix the texture of the block behind to fashion a proper looking berry vine for our base. base. And hey, add in some sweet berry bushes by the base and it's even hard to tell the difference. Sometimes it's the textures you least expect that work out the best, and I think there's something kind of beautiful about that. Like if you were going to build out your wooden floor, you'd probably never think to use beehives. But it turns out these buzzing blocks can work surprisingly well for a tile pattern. Now, as you know, lanterns cannot be placed unsupported, which unfortunately means we can't just hang these off our walls. Or so you thought. Instead, if we place chains above and a lever like so, we can give the facade of a lantern hanging from the wall. So if you're looking for the next way to light up your castle build, maybe reach for these instead of a stack of torches. Fish tanks make a great conversation starter to have in your base, but not everyone could justify building one that big. So if you're looking for more of a fishbowl than a fish tank, then this might be the trick. See, if you rest a minecart on top of a waterlogged set of sea pickles, then any fish inside will stay hydrated, giving us a much smaller footprint and a new roommate for the house. If you've ever made glazed terracotta, then you're well familiar with the different designs these blocks can have. But did you know that they can blend together? Well, sure enough, something like this Reddit user's pattern brings together a number of the different colors into something of an expanding ring pattern. And I for one think that's a very cool sight. So while it'll take some time to orient them all the right way around, at least it's a project that'll pay off. Now, I doubt anyone's favorite pastime in Minecraft is reading, but that doesn't mean that we can't look the part. So while your friends might settle for a regular written book inside of their lecterns, if we just place two of these facing inwards, then we got a supersized tome to use at your desk. While Minecraft has its fair share of foodstuffs, the cake is the only one that we can place as a decoration. So for the rest of them, we'll need to get innovative, such as this pork roast made from a stripped birch log. And while it's probably too crispy to make a meal out of it, I think it sells the illusion pretty well. And for a campsite build, that might be all you need. Just for your sake, don't actually use a fire underneath it. Somewhere in Mojang Studios, they decided it made sense for only Bedrock users to have potion-filled cauldrons. And while I can't figure out why this hasn't been ported to Java, I can say it opens up some cool possibilities on the other end. For example, why wash your banner like this when you can instead make a cool illusion of washing it like so? In case you didn't know, we're fully capable of using Unicode and special characters on a Minecraft sign. And while that does allow us to type an arrow like this instead of this, it also opens up this neat little detail. See, by putting this black square along the corners of the sign, we can make it look like it's nailed down to the wall. It's a simple detail, but it's also simple to do, which I'd say makes it worth your time. If you've taken the time to add vegetation to your base, you're plenty aware that most plants have tall and small variants. But unfortunately, these azalea bushes from the Caves and Cliffs update don't hit that mark. Or they do, but the trees that they make are just so big that you wouldn't use them in any kind of small spot. So in that case, you'll be happy to know that just by adding a moss block on top, we can get the perfect sized plant ready for your new house tour. There are plenty of videos out there that'll tell you how to make a working TV in Minecraft, but how about a broken one? Or more accurately, one with technical difficulties. Well, thanks to the addition of glow ink sacks, we can dye the ink on a sign to make a proper looking television set. Pirate ships are a staple of Minecraft building, but while others would like to focus on the scope and craftsmanship of the boat, I'll personally focus in on the crew. See, for visual reasons, blacksmiths already seem to fit right in as a pirate crew. I mean, the eye patch is a dead giveaway, but what's even cooler is partnering them with a grindstone cannon like this. That way, they interact with it as a workstation, and then they look like they're manning the cannons. And I think that's just great. Keeping your base safe is an important problem to consider, but doing it in style is just as important. So while we could just shoot arrows off the top of our guard tower like so, wouldn't it make more sense to add in stairs like this and then create a functional matriculation, letting us upkeep both the aesthetics and the safety of our kingdom? One of the staples of Minecraft exploration is setting up camp wherever and whenever you need, which is nice, but something tells me placing your bed on the floor isn't nearly as pretty as this. Though unfortunately, setting up a tent in Minecraft can be just as confusing as it is in real life. Though once you take the time to lay out the armor stands at correct rotations and add in your banners, tripwire hooks, and chains, the results are clear to see. Ask any builder, furniture can really liven up a build. And who would have guessed it, but armor stands are the solution. Though what we're doing here doesn't rely on any special NBT data, but rather, we're just mixing the hitboxes. Through the help of snow layers, we can position our armor stands just right to use them as not only the legs of a table, but also the plates that we put on it. So if you're not able to add Mr. Crayfish's furniture mod to the realm, then why not give these things a shot? It's a long-held fact in architecture that water features can really add to the atmosphere. I mean, after all, that's why they're called water features. But adding those into Minecraft isn't as fun when just one water source block is a cubic meter in size. So to have something smaller scale, then it turns out that waterlogged stairs are the solution. And with these, we can get an amount of water more appropriate for any canals, creeks, or streams that you plan on building. Flowers offer a cute way to add a splash of color to your build, but by this point, everyone's seen the standard offerings. So to get a bit more unique, the new Spore Blossom might be my new favorite. See, by placing down one of these in an invisible item frame, we can shrink down the size and attach these to both our floors and our walls, giving us a new plant to play around with and a fun detail for those lush caves. All it takes is pairing a pressure plate with an item frame to get something of a place setting for our tables. And this detail is definitely a necessity for whatever dining dining hall you're building next. I'm gonna go out on a limb and venture that most of us have a bed in the house. And while that's the case, it's easy for everything to feel samey. So to add a little variation to where you snooze, these might be the perfect stand-in. As such, we can have our armor stand's helmets poke through and function as pillows for the bed. And with dyed leather helmets, you can even mix and match as you please. Windows can really help to flesh out a build, but what if the standard glass windows don't fit your aesthetic? Well, then these trapdoors might be the better solution. By mixing the orientations, we can essentially open and close our shutters depending on what we want. While armor stands can open up plenty of possibilities, unfortunately, on Java, they don't have their hands by default. Though if you want to at least pretend that we do, there is an option worth trying. By overlapping the hitboxes of an armor stand and an oak fence gate, we'll get a pretty solid set of arms on our mannequin. Despite how it is in game, not every tree has a trunk this size. But since Minecraft's blocks are one size fits all, we'll have to get creative. And for that, walls actually work quite well. Using diorite walls for birch and andesite for acacia, we can make our own skinny trees to use in your world. And while the illusion might break if people get too close, this could do the trick for some landscaping at a distance. By using just a candle and a chainmail helmet, we can get a pretty convincing mouse and keyboard setup. And hey, for an added bonus, enchant the helmet for an RGB effect. Or if you're more of a console player, don't sweat it. A black stone wall does the trick for that as well. Redstone is great, but secret redstone is even better. So in that case, why settle for having a button out in the open when you could instead just tuck the thing behind a banner and keep it out of plain sight? That way, your secret entrance can have an equally secret input for extra security. And if it keeps those greedy people away from your stuff, I think this is definitely worthwhile. Defending your base from mobs is an important subject, but luckily this method lets us keep out the monsters without sacrificing our aesthetic. As it turns out, mobs won't walk over berry bushes in their pathfinding, meaning if we tuck some of these underneath our carpet floor, we can use that to both keep mobs in place and keep them out of your base. For the building community, the addition of candles in the Caves and Cliffs update was a big deal, and while they're useful as a light source, their unlit form can also function as a decoration, like so, where we use the candles as a stem for our plants and bushes, or even as a flower on top of cactus blocks. Just before you place them, remember to use a solid block first, and then you can swap it out for the leaves. Banners open up a ton of options, but that doesn't excuse their setbacks. Let's face it, a 2x1 rectangle isn't always the size you're looking for, and while they might not fix that entirely, maybe armor stands are the next solution. As it turns out, by putting banners in either an armor stand's hand or head, you can keep the detail all while the item gets smaller. Bookshelves seem like a nice decoration, but they can very quickly get repetitive, and oftentimes the texture is just reserved for your level 30 enchantment room, but this might be a way to break up that sameness. Apparently, the loom texture when placed side by side makes for a pretty convincing empty bookshelf block. So while it's a far cry from the variated textures we see in something like Vanilla Tweaks, I do think it's a step in the right direction. Chest organization isn't a fun business. Not only do you have to sort out all the items, but then the item frames for labeling can be quite expensive as well. It's a hassle I'm sure we're all hoping to avoid. And to do that, might I suggest color coding instead. With banners, we can denote the chest or barrel like so, and all without wasting the item to put it inside the frame. Clearly, banners can make for some fun designs, but at a certain point, you're limited by the canvas. Well, in that scenario, how about we ditch the one banner and instead supersize our operation? With this, we not only get more room for details, but also quite the spectacle for any visitors coming by your base. Is it time consuming? Yeah, there's no doubt about that. But when the result looks this cool, it might be worth it. Ladders definitely have their purpose, but unlike the real world, we can't just place one of these out in the open. Or we can't like this. But if we use the trapdoor and ladder trick, it's possible to not only have a freestanding ladder, but also have it climbable on both sides. Simply place the ladders where possible in the trapdoors, and you can climb it just the same. Villagers can be very helpful, but they're not exactly the easiest to direct. And more often than not, our trading halls turn into a peanut gallery. But thankfully, all it takes is a bit of honey to sweeten that deal. See, when placed on top of this, the mobs can't manage to jump out. So from that point, you can tuck them into the desk and make sure they stay there for the entire shift. Now, a cool feature of banners is that if you right-click one with a map, you're able to make a waypoint. But taking that one further, what if we didn't just make one of these, but 100 of them? That way, we could form different routes along a map wall. So if you're wanting to color code paths along your world, this is a great way to do that. Sometimes, you've got to make part of your base off limits, which makes sense. If you build something as dangerous as a wither mob switch, all it takes is one fool getting a bit too close, and the whole operation goes sideways. So to keep them and your world safe, why not put up a couple of these banner warning signs like such? Because it's always better to prevent an accident than clean up after one. Thanks to the works of C418, Minecraft has plenty of music to listen to. And then, through note blocks, we can add in a fair bit of our own tunes as well. But while those instruments are well and good to listen to, what if we want something a bit more visual? Well, that's where the dragon heads come in. But of course, not like this. But rather, if we follow along how others have done, we can push these dragon-headed armor stands inside of other blocks, giving us a pretty convincing piano to use in our worlds. Now, in my time playing Minecraft, I've seen plenty of pool tables built on different servers. And while some are much cooler than others, I felt like some of them games still left something to be desired, because, at least for me, my go-to game is foosball, not pool. But luckily, we have the perfect no-arm statues to make these no-arm players work. Though admittedly, to pull this off, it is a multi-step process. But after lining up the stands along a chorus plant, we can turn this mess of armor stands into a pretty spiffy looking setup. If you look across different cultures, you're bound to see these things pop up. And while these floating lanterns might work well over here, we can actually put them to use in our Minecraft worlds. See, it is true that lanterns can't be placed unsupported, but with the help of trapdoors, we can not only place them in the sky, but also give them the casing to look like real life, giving us results that are bound to give even Tangled some competition. When you think of a diamond sword, the last thing to come to mind is decoration, but it turns out that might be our mistake, since with the help of invisible armor stands posed like so, we can make some really beautiful designs, including these enchanted angel wings like so. Or use netherite ones and you can get something a bit more sinister. And with that, folks, YouTube thinks that you might like this video, so see if they're right and have a good one, alright?